Welcome to the Couch Time Podcast, where we give you tools to connect with your kid and point them to Jesus. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Aaron.
All right, friends, and today is a fun day.
Super exciting.
We are kicking off our summer series for the Couch Time Podcast, where we are reading this book. I'll show it on the screen for those who are watching, but it's called Engaging Your Teen's World. Subtitle, Understanding What Today's Youth Are Thinking, Doing, and Watching. It's written by David Eaton and Jeremiah Callahan. I would give the cover like an 8 out of 10 rating. It's easy for me to spot on my...
Yeah, it's funny, though, because everybody I talk to and give this to and reference, they're like, man, who uses headphones that have cords anymore? So it's like they made this cover, and it was really relevant for like a month, and then Apple came out with cordless AirPods.
Totally.
And now it's like...
They're hosed. Yeah, it's not good. Man.
But yes, the cover is pretty fantastic.
I like it. Anyway, so this book, written by some guys who work for an organization called Axis. You can go to their website.
We shared a bunch of their stuff.
Yeah.
Parent guides and...
Yep. Yeah, they're great. They're even, I know they're headquartered in this Colorado Springs, so we... when I was in Boulder, worked with them a little bit, but great crew, great organization. They've written this book for us, and really, I think the intent of the book and what we're going to walk throughout the summer. This is our little summer book club for you all. Is we'll take it a chapter at a time and just discuss what they're talking about and what their strategies are for engaging in your children, students at youth group, their world. So we're excited for that. We would encourage you to read the book. I think it's okay to say you don't have to read the book to follow along with
Everybody's
the podcast.
busy. Like, if you can read it, great. But it's like, even if you can't, tune in, because it's such a valuable resource. We want to get you nuggets of wisdom from it, which is why we're doing it. But you don't have to read to follow along. We'll do our best to dissect it and spit out stuff that we really like for you.
Totally. So we hope you can follow along week to week. And even if you're popping in and out, I think that's great too. I think there will be good nuggets each week, all centered around this topic of engaging your teen's world. So it's going to be good. And so today what we're going to do is this week we're doing chapter 1, but also the introduction. I thought there were some good nuggets from the introduction as well. So Aaron, I'll just walk us through it a little bit.
Do it.
And I've highlighted some things that I think stood out to me. Number one, in the introduction, I think that they sort of state their purpose in the book right on the front end in the introduction on page 10, where the authors say, we want to move you from being a caring adult in the life of a teen to a confident influencer of your teen. So
nailed it.
And when I was thinking about confident influencer, I actually think of like social media influencers.
Influence is a word that's been hijacked by social media. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember during the pandemic, I was listening to a podcast and it was talking about how teens are being discipled essentially by social media influencers. Yeah. They are watching them, listening to them, learning what social media influencers are doing, saying, how they're living. And so, in a sense, hopefully this book helps us to redeem that a little bit, to help parents or whoever you are listening to this podcast, if you're a volunteer or even if you've got someone in your life that is a teen, how you can influence and disciple students and teens. So I thought that was good. Move from being just a caring adult to an influencing adult.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I think that influence is something that is related to culture and relevance.
Yep.
And I think that's hitting the nail on the head that this talks about is, kind of a tool to help become somewhat relevant in your teen's world or people that you know in their world. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yep. All right. So chapter 1 titled, You Are a Third Way Parent. And the book starts classic book style, like 3 quotations to start the chapter.
Yeah.
I actually thought the third one, it's from the Barna Group. They released a study on how people are engaging and communicating in light of social media and all that. So they released a study in 2018 and says that the average adult says that they only have one spiritual conversation a year.
That's shocking.
It's pretty shocking.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, what is a spiritual conversation and one adult, 1 year? Like, those are pretty vague, but at the same time, kind of shocking just to think about and consider.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think probably a lot of you have more than one conversation a year.
I hope so.
I hope. But it just, like, I know for me, when I read them, my first reaction is like, oh, yeah, I probably could have more. But sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's hard to know how to do that. So hopefully this book will help with some of these things and get really practical. All right. So just moving along the book. Let's see. So they start off with basically both the authors, their personal stories, which I think was cool, setting up how they got engaged, even with their organization. I've talked about one of the reasons they write this book and started access.org is because they saw how teens, their faith struggled to stick post high school.
Yeah.
So what, Aaron, even as you think about that, why do you think that sometimes happens? Why do teens struggle to carry their faith on into college or whatever post high school looks like for teens?
I think the book talks a lot about that in the intro, but then it just carries, that's somewhat of the premises, and their goal is like teens owning their faith and it's sticking and it becoming their own. And I think part of the reason it doesn't is because I don't know. There's a few thoughts that I've got, but primarily I think students aren't known.
Yep.
They're struggling, independence, maturity, what they're wrestling with, doubts, fears, failure, shame, sin. There's so many things, and a lot of that, if they don't have somebody who knows where they're at, knows what they're wrestling through, they're looking to people, influencers, for hope, for help. And spiritually speaking, if teens don't have somebody helping connect biblical spiritual truth to things that they're wrestling with, they're going to look to worldly things for hope and for help. And so it's like, but it takes somebody to influence them biblically, somebody to influence them with truth. So I think that if teens don't have people or aren't in places where they're hearing biblical truth and it's not connecting to the heart of what they're actually wrestling with, there's a disconnect. And the older we get, the bigger that gap becomes, I think, because the more sin that we see, the more shame that we have, the more experiences, the bigger perspective we've got. And I think that people need to be very serious about connecting with teens and being very in tune with where they are now, what they're wrestling with, what questions they've got, what are they looking for, what do they need.
Yep.
So I don't
know if
that answers the question, but
no, that was great. I think that was my takeaway too, is that one of the main reasons we see students abandoning their faith when they move out of their house and go off to college is that they don't have someone who is engaged spiritually consistently in their life. And so they become untethered from youth group, untethered from their house, and sort of stray away from the faith.
Yeah, I would also say with this culture that we're in, and I would say, I mean, you've been in student ministry for a while now and at multiple churches in multiple states around the country. I'm pretty sure it's the same. With the widening gap between technology, social media, and the people who are influencers, there's a growing gap between the people who are in their life understanding where the students really are, because they're in this separate world almost, and which this book talks about it, but the greater there is a need for people to go out of their way to enter where their culture and world is.
Yep.
Yeah, and I assume that that's the same across any culture in the U.S., any state, any city, any youth group, anybody that's got a cell phone and social media, that's the case.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and it just looks different based upon where you live.
Yeah.
Completely agree. But so what I would say this chapter, the main idea that they are laying out for parents, for the reader, is they are encouraging us, if you care about a teen, to become what they call a third way parent by engaging with your teen instead of fighting or flying. So when the book talks about a third way parent or a third way influencer in the life of a teen, it's someone who's engaging. And that's the third way. Way 1 and 2, or what they describe as fighting and flying. And even reading the book, so how that looks, like you were just talking about, students have this world. It's teen culture. It's what they're
Yeah.
seeing. It's what they're experiencing. And typically we either fight against it. So that, I mean, that can look like literally having fights with your kid, trying to shelter them from these things, trying to shelter yourself from them, or flying, which means just ignoring it, running away with
Bury
it,
your head in the sand. Yeah.
burying your head in the sand. And I think even when I think about how I engage with students in the youth group, of like, because I'm also confronted with this.
Yeah.
I typically fly. I'm like, I just give up. I'm like,
Your small group leader will handle this.
yeah, it's like I can't. It's things are always changing, and actually, there's like, even when I look at my youth group, there's so many like interests that kids have. It becomes like some kids like bowling, some like video games, others like
Can't do it all.
you can't do it all, and so it's just overwhelming, and I disengage
Yeah.
from trying to engage and learn. So how about
Or,
you?
for me, what it looks like is I'm really embarrassed because I come across as the old guy. So
Totally.
I try to do research into the lingo that they use, or to a certain subculture with anime or with something, and then I start talking about it with the kids, and they're just like, "Stop, just." It's like I would have to be in it, fully engulfed. Like I would actually have to have it as a hobby to fully understand and be able to
Right.
relate with them. And so it's kind of like this. It's like I'm just not going to try, because what I perceive their response is it's a failure. Um, but again, according to this book, and I've seen it over the years, students, I think that you communicate that you care by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is an encouragement to me, because it's easier to just not and kind of stay very surfacey.
Yeah.
And I want to be like an expert, so I want the kids to think that I'm an expert. So I have to be willing to ask questions, educate myself, and be willing to come across like I don't know.
Yes.
And all three of those things are really hard. Like they take humble, intentional effort,
Yep.
which is hard.
Yep. I, you just gave like 3 points that I think encapsulates what they're trying to get at when it comes to what it means to be a third way parent and to engage. Would you say
I don't even remember now. A humble,
humble, learn, and ask
intent.
questions?
Yeah, ask questions, educate your, like learn, like actually do some research, but then have a humble, like you're not gonna understand fully, but that's okay.
Yep. And I don't know about parents, but there have been a few times as a youth pastor where, I've been talking to kids and it feels like I have breakthrough and they are sharing what's actually going on and what they're actually, it kind of feels like this moment of, oh my gosh, they're opening up.
Yeah.
They're telling me what's going
Yeah.
it's happening. And I like distinctly, I think your point of like, what does it look like to engage and be a third way parent? Like for me, genuinely, I have this memory of some students sharing with me like what it looks like for them to engage on social media. Snapchat was what they were struggling with, and I was talking to a bunch of guys, and they were talking about how, just them struggling with lust at school, and like it was this hour-long conversation. It all started with me at like playing dumb, because I am dumb when it comes to their world, and asking questions.
Yeah.
Like I don't. What is the point? Like I remember like what is happening on Snapchat? What's the point? And what causes drama on
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Honestly, they just opened up this world.
Yeah, and I think that it's really powerful too. And I've said this before to parents. It's like, and I see this myself with my kids even, and my oldest is only 7. I can't imagine by the time that they're going to be teenagers, the culture that it's going to be different then.
Yeah.
But you can't parent your kids based on your childhood. It's like the truth of your like principles you can, but as far as the context is different. For example, lust, like that hasn't changed, or drama, that hasn't changed, and there's biblical truth for that. But when you're talking to kids, you can't just plow in being like, here's how you handle drama. It's like you have to seek to understand Snapchat. You have to seek to understand the context of how communication works now, and then tailor your truth that you know to plate it up for them in a way that's like, oh, because I mean, otherwise you just come across as the lecturer, the parent, like the adult that is always preaching.
Totally.
Which sometimes there's, that you need to do that, but yeah.
Yep. And I think too, it's like even using the example of Snapchat, when it comes to like, what does it look like for us? Like typically if it's fight or flight, it's either I'm going to fight against the social media thing tooth and nail. And maybe you need to.
Yeah.
Like maybe your child is abusing it. It's genuinely not healthy. But I would start with learning. And if you learn that your child is not healthy, then you can fight against it a little bit, right? But
I really liked in the book, it talked about the motivations for the three. So it's like the fight and the flight look different, but the motivation's actually the same.
oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it's fear.
Yep.
And a lot of parents I talk to, they're parenting when they come to me to, it's like, what do I do with my teen? They're struggling with pornography. Or it's like they're struggling with, drinking or smoking weed, or they're really struggling with depression and anxiety, whatever it is. There is this, I need to do something because I'm terrified what's going to happen to my kid.
Yep.
It's like, that's not wrong. But if that is the only motivation that you've, like, your kid may never stop doing what they're struggling with.
Yep.
It's like, if you just want to protect them from the things you're scared from happening to them versus connecting with their heart, like that is what the thing that has to change. And the engagement isn't just letting them do whatever they want, but it's also seeking to get at the heart, not just try to keep them from happening to them whatever your worst fears are.
Yeah.
And it's, I think for parenting, it's walking a line. Again, my oldest is only 7, so it's like I'm not an expert, but with teenagers, there's a line between being their best friend and seeking to understand them, but also being the responsible adult and authority in their life that has to tell them what to do and have restrictions and be the bad guy. So it's a line to walk, but
yeah. And also, I sympathize with parents who fear is it's like I might like when it comes to what my child is experiencing, having to let go of some control and like with the knowledge that might lead to sin and exposure and loss of innocence is like, oh, I don't have kids. That is like what keeps me up at night. So I'm like, when I think about having kids, like, oh my gosh, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
So man,
the fear is very real. Like it's like, stop being afraid. It's like, it's your kids, like my children. I'm terrified about what the world is going to be like when they're 12, when they're 13, but what did Jesus say? It's like, we're not to live in fear. Like we have truth that transcends and is timeless. And it applies, but that's where the battle is at the heart of the kids, is applying the truth.
Yep.
Not just keeping them from bad things happening.
Yep. All right. So here's where I'm going to land. I thought there was a good little paragraph that I'll read for everyone on page 22. When talking about, this chapter is a launching pad, and it's, introing us into one of the main ideas, being a third-way parent. A third-way parent is an engaged parent. So middle of page 22, third-way parents have a growth mindset. They keep learning. They adapt. They're willing to look at themselves and ask, am I a part of the problem? Are my kids on their phone all the time because they see me on my phone all the time? How do I need to grow as a parent so my kid can grow in their faith? We love hearing from parents who are growing. So I think those are good sort of marching orders to end the chapter and end this episode. Is like, an engaged parent is a learning and growing parent.
Yep. Like
I always tell our student ministry volunteers, when it comes to leading kids spiritually, we can't lead kids where we haven't gone before. So and I think that's probably the same posture we as youth pastors, we have parents, people who are trying to engage in teens' world. How am I growing? How am I learning about their world? And even the phone quote, are the kids on their phone all the time because they see me on my phone all the time? It's like, I see that in my marriage. It's like, man, like when I disengage, my wife will too. And like I lead the way in that. Yeah. So, so just encourage you guys as parents. We start off chapter 1, third way parent. We're not going to,
third way parent.
What does it look like for you to engage in your teen's world and what they're experiencing instead of always fighting or always flighting, running away?
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, on one of my favorite quotes from this chapter
yeah.
on page 20, and I agree with them, but they're talking about specifically the culture, and it's like every parent's working from a deficit as far as
Yeah, I
like
like that
not
too.
having like
Yes.
you have a deficit as a parent, like you don't understand, you don't get it, like your kid somehow, some way, and it's like that's not crazy. Like many days it would be easier to be in our cubicle at work. Like it'd be easier to be doing something other than parenting.
Yep.
Like it's hard to parent. But back to what you said at the beginning, talking about faith and teens having a faith that is their own and it's sticking after they turn 18, after they're out of your roof, from under your roof, they're not your responsibility anymore. They're their own adult. Like, what will you have imparted to them with faith? And it says on page 20, we believe a heart connection gives you the best chance to pass on lifelong faith to them. And that's what I think the book is about. I believe I've seen that in my own life. It's like the people that have influenced and impacted my life, my parents, but also other individuals. I could list 5 to 10 of them right now that connected with my heart as I was a teenager, that over the years I trusted and I listened to, and God used to speak truth to me. And I really do believe that. It's like connecting with your kid's heart is what you should be after. And so the third way parent that's how you engage.
Yep.
You don't operate out of fear, and you don't operate out of I just hope this is going to work out. I'll see them when they're 18 and hope that we're friends.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of thing. So,
and I think parents, I just think of you guys like this summer, when this podcast, like front end of summer, you're gonna have vacations, trips,
lots of time.
Like you're gonna have a lot of time to really like experiment, ask questions, and engage your kids' world. So
yeah,
we'll be praying for you.
Yes.
And but yeah, we're excited for this book. Hope you tune in, read it, or just plug in when you can, and engage with us as we walk through the book.
Hey, thanks for watching.
You can follow us on Instagram at The Couch Time Podcast.
Let us know what you thought about the podcast. Also, let us know if there's any topics or things you'd like us to cover. You can comment and email us at podcast@graceky.org.
Please like, subscribe, and share the video with other parents.